Hey everybody, Tim here. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 51. We're on the other side of 50 now. So the episode has earned its AARP membership. So I'm pretty excited about that. Thank you so much for allowing me to have a little bit of time off. I took this last week off and it was needed. A bit of a summer break, if you will. And I tell you, when you get into a routine or rhythm and you take that time off, trying to get back into that rhythm is really, really difficult. And although I don't equate the podcast to work because it's fun, it's a hobby. It's very much along the lines of playing the game for me, being a huge gamer. However, there's a lot of work that goes into it. You know, I'm looking up topics. I'm looking up current events. I'm setting up and arranging interviews and reaching out to people to have them on the show and doing all types of things. And then after the show drops, I'm promoting the show, whether that's putting the show out there on social media, whether it's tweeting about it, trying to stay relevant. And it can be work sometimes. So, having that time to kind of step away and relax and chill. I didn't post on social media. I didn't check the show's statistics, and I barely even checked the show's inbox. I barely even did that. So it was nice to take a step away. But the problem with that is when you're trying to get back into a rhythm now, whether that be work, whether that be a podcast, or even if it's something like getting back around the family, it can be a little bit of a challenge, so to speak. So I'm happy to be back, and I'm hoping that by the time I get done this episode, I can be back in full swing mentality. And my mentality is, hey, up and at 'em, go get 'em, full on attack mode, complete the mission, right? But until then, I'll say just bear with me as I try to get up to speed. Now, I won't keep you for too long, and I know I say that a lot, but this time I really mean it. I think I'm going to clock this show at or around 45 minutes. So it may not even be long. So just me getting my feedback up underneath me and me trying to get into the swing of things. And I didn't want this episode to be like a rant. This is a topic that I'm very passionate about. And what I didn't want to happen is to have it like very akin to a rant. Now, I know a lot of people tune in to hear the rants and they feel the same way, and I'm that emotional. People are living vicariously through me in some regards when it comes to their emotions, right? So I get that part of it, but I definitely didn't want to come off super angry here. But I did want a little bit of your time. Before I get into the topic, though, I did want to bring something to everyone's attention that I've been aware of for a while, and a really tough decision that I'm going to have to make. And I'm sure a lot of you will have to fill me on this. So for those of you watching live, whether it be on Periscope or whether it be on Facebook, if you don't go to YouTube or Spreaker or Spotify, whatever you listen to your podcasts on, if you don't go and listen to this back on whatever media app you listen to, you won't notice it because you're watching live now. You'll hear everything as it is. But if you're listening on those media platforms, on those apps, you'll hear like this skipping, like this clicking. And for all of my audio engineers out there, you may have experienced this in the past, but for all of you who just kind of plug in and listen, you've been hearing this clicking, and it's been bugging me for like 6 or 7 episodes now. And sometimes it goes away. It's fine. I figured out we're good to go. And I can't tell you the past 3 episodes in particular how much mic checking I've been doing. I'll do audio tests. I'll do mic checks, the whole 9. And then I'll go back and play it back. And during the playback, it's fine. It sounds great. It's beautiful. And then I go and record a whole episode that's 45 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes long. And then I go to listen to it and edit it. And next thing you know, there's this skipping or clicking. And for me, I'm at that point, I'm like, hey, I already recorded the episode. It's already 10 o'clock at night. It's going to be after 12 by the time I finish recording and editing and publishing. And what do? Do I not put out a perfectly good recording, save for that skipping? and try to reenact the Sunday night recording to Monday night? Do I cut into my week, or do I kind of just chalk it, put it out there, and hope that you all can just bear with me? And I've been doing the latter. For those of you who have been listening for a while, you know that 2019 and 2018 were difficult years as far as consistency goes for me. I was a little bit more consistent in 2018 than I was last year. And in 2019 in particular, I went back and I looked at, I only dropped 4 episodes, and I didn't even realize it until I went back and took a look. And, ever since, I'm going to say May or April of this year, I've dropped an episode every week, save for last week. And it's felt really, really good. So what I don't want is to come up with an excuse to miss a week outside of a planned vacation. What I don't want is to take a step back and say, you know what, I'll put it out next week, or I'll work on it, because that's how like that lazy bug kind of creeps in. And we don't want that, because then what'll happen is, like I mentioned at the top of the episode, it gets difficult trying to get into the full swing of things again. So what happens is you go, you know what, maybe next week I'll do it. And then next thing you know, you didn't put an episode out in 2-3 weeks. And we definitely don't want to go that route. So I appreciate everyone tolerating me, tolerating that skipping. Hopefully, you won't have to deal with it too much longer. And if you couldn't just tolerate it, you're listening to it and it's just like, you know what, this is too much. I can't, that skipping is just too distracting. And for some people, they may not have even noticed the skipping. And here I am pointing it out right now. And you're going to go back and listen to episode 50 or 49 or 48 or wherever. And you go, you know what? Now I do hear that skipping. So I do apologize about that. But here's the decision. It's a really, really tough decision I'm going to make. And I feel like a lot of the people listening who have had to make a purchase like this can relate to what I'm about to say. So I'm going to get a new laptop. I'm well overdue for a new laptop, and I kept putting it off because I really don't know how to treat myself. I really don't know how to spend money on myself, a large amount of money anyway. And if it's not related to health or just something extracurricular, it's tough for me to buy a new thing for myself that's really expensive. And I dropped $200 on myself earlier this summer, and I felt like a bad guy, and it was for me and I deserved it. But you all know, especially when you have families or you just didn't grow up in a privileged household, I'm sure you all can relate in a way where you're not used to doing things for you. You're usually the one on the back burner, right? You're usually the one giving to other people, whether that be time, energy, or money. You're usually giving that resource to somebody else. So you find it that hard for yourself that, hey, I can't spend this on myself. I can't do this for myself. So I've been kind of putting the laptop away. And then it was also kind of like a nice to have, not necessarily a need. Like, hey, I can do everything that I want to do and execute just fine on my current laptop. It's a laptop from, I want to say 2016. So it's 4 years old now. It runs Windows 10. It's fine. It's a really good laptop. It's an Acer laptop, and it has a very underrated feature, and that's a keypad, a number pad. It has a number pad, which is a very, very underrated feature to have on a laptop. For all of my typers and remote workers and project managers out there, I know you know how important that number pad is and how underrated it is in the laptop world, because you usually get a PC for that, right? You don't really, the whole idea for a laptop is mobility and, portability. So less is more when it comes to a laptop. But for me, I'm a little bit old school. I like a 15-inch laptop. I like it with a number pad. So anyway, I'm going to get a new laptop. I finally have a reason now. This skipping has started to become a burden. It's not nice to have anymore. It's kind of teetering on that line of a need more than a want. And I'm going to get a MacBook, and they just don't have a size that I want. They have a 16-inch, but it's a MacBook Pro, and it clocks in at minimum $1,800, and I don't want to spend that much money, although I know it'll last me forever. And my thought process is, even though it does not have a number pad, you can buy a number pad extension. Like, you can get a little number pad port and plug it in. You can't buy an Apple extension. So if you got a laptop that's not an Apple MacBook, you can't buy an Apple extension for that. So that's my thought process. Although the Surface Pro Laptop 3 looks really nice, and I think I want that. So I'm teetering here. I'm going to have to do a little bit more research, but within the next 2 weeks or so, I'm definitely going to buy this new laptop. So hopefully, for those of you who have been in the trenches with me and dealing with the skipping, I sincerely and humbly apologize. I appreciate your tolerance, and hopefully we won't have to deal with it for too much longer. Now, rolling into the gift card. Now, for everyone who celebrated episode 50 for me and with me rather, and you stuck around and listened to episode 50, you know I had a huge announcement to celebrate the huge milestone of episode 50. I decided to give out two $25 gift cards. Now, full transparency, are you all listening, the audience, the listeners, the participants, you all are my extended family. So full transparency here. I'm not going to hide anything or keep anything. I have very little participation when I announced it. Only a few people reached out to me. I'm not going to say who just for the sake of, the giveaway. But I had a few people reach out to me and tell me, and they participated the way, but I thought it was kind of unfair to only dip into that pool of people. It was a very limited number of people. So what I would like to do is take another opportunity, and I'm going to be very, very, very vocal about putting it out there. And we have until next week. So I will announce the winner on episode 52. So at that point, it would have been 3 weeks, if my math is right, since I made the announcement. So that's 3 weeks for you all to participate. So I had a few people text me. I had a few people hit me up in the Twitter DMs. I had somebody call me, so hit me up any way imaginable to participate. And again, to clarify, it's two $25 Amazon gift cards I'm giving away to celebrate the 50th episode. And to qualify for a chance to win, all you have to do is tell me what your favorite episode was, what the title of your favorite episode was, whatever the case may be. And I mean, you get bonus points if you tell me why it was your favorite. I would love to have that sort of interaction with you. So please, please, please do. But all you have to do is hit me up and tell me, hey, what your favorite episode is, and you get a chance to win. And come next week, whether it's 2 people who participated or 50 people that participated, I'm going to announce the winner. I'm going to make sure I have a witness and everything like that. I'm going to pull a draft. What I'll actually probably do is I'll probably do like a raffle, not a raffle, but the giveaway live, and then announce it on the show, so that way everyone can like see it. And I'm still toying around with that, but regardless, episode 52 will have the king or queen of, or both of, the gift card giveaway. $25 to put in your pocket, guys. I know you can use that extra $25 from Amazon. Maybe get yourself a nice book, some kitchenware, some clothes, whatever the case may be. I'm sure it will come in handy. That said, shout out to everyone tuning in on the Facebook Live and Periscope. We don't have any comments yet, just people watching. So I'm going to save you all the commercial break, and I'm not going to cut away. But for everyone watching, thank you. Thank you so much. And if you do have a comment, I'll see your comment and I'll get to it on our next break. Now, transitioning into this week's topic, cancel culture. Now, I have a lot of feelings about this topic, and it's a topic that I'm very passionate about because I'm a big fan of freedom of speech and self-expression. And I think everyone has a right to express themselves in a specific way, however they see fit or necessary. However, I think we all should be held accountable for what we do and say. But I think the line of what's reasonable and what's not reasonable is oftentimes blurred, and sometimes doesn't even exist. It's just this battleground, this rogue battleground with no rules, and it becomes a popularity contest. The best example I can give, and I won't say this coworker's name, but this coworker is a supporter of the show. So, hey, buddy, if you listen, I'm sorry. But I'm going to give you the best example I can think of when it came to when it comes to this whole cancel culture. I had a buddy that I worked at my previous job with, and this particular person came in who had made an order for one of the products that we sold, but they had made the order at another store, another location. So these orders are specific to your location. The best way I can explain it is the way that I explained it to this particular woman. This woman came in and said, well, hey, I made an order for it. Why can't I pick it up here? And I said, well, each store has its own individual stock, and it's kind of like ordering food. If you order a pizza at Domino's, and I named the location, and then you go to another Domino's pizza, that Domino's pizza won't have your order. And she understood it. And she was like, oh, okay. Now, the first time I tried that out was a bit of an experiment, but it was a successful one. And it was kind of my go-to example. I found that usually the two biggest things that people can relate to when I worked retail were food and cars. If you can come up with some sort of example with food and cars, people will usually understand where you're coming from. So that said, it became kind of a Timism, if you will, a bit of a go-to phrase or example or analogy I would kind of rest my hat on. I had a coworker who did not look like me. He was tall and white, and we were in a densely urban neighborhood that were the majority of the residents were black. So this woman had come in to same scenario, pick up an order that she had placed at another location, and my coworker said, well, it's kind of like ordering pizza. Same thing I did, exact same way. The delivery was a little bit different, pun intended, for the pizza. The delivery was a little different, but it was the message was the same. And she did not have a positive reaction. She cut him off. She snapped at him. She said, all right, well, you didn't have to say all that. And she didn't like it. And that's the biggest thing. That's the personal example that I kind of can think of when it comes to this whole cancel culture. Because I was well liked at the store, and because I was of the neighborhood, both literally and figuratively of the neighborhood. I lived around the corner at one point. I grew up around the corner from the store. People came in and it was just normal. The talk was normal. No one gave a crap. But for my coworker who wasn't as popular or maybe wasn't as appealing, for him to have this, to say the exact same thing I did, and for people to have an adverse reaction, is, I feel like, cancel culture in one of its earliest stages. It pretty much boils down to this. Do you like the person? Do you like what they represent? Do you like what they said? And the thing that bothers me the most, or I should say one of the things that bothers me the most about cancel culture, is how reactive it is. You're using these intangible guidelines and metrics to measure if someone should be canceled or not. And their lifestyle it's impacting their lifestyle in such a way in the tangible areas. You're impacting these people's income, the ability to put food on the table or food in their, kids' mouths, and now you got to draw this line, right? Well, you take somebody like Harvey Weinstein, right? And even Bill Cosby to a lesser degree. And you find out all of the things that they've done in the past, and was absolutely horrible, of course. And we're not going to get into the minutia of what was right, what was wrong, what was acceptable, and what wasn't. We're just going to get into the fact that clearly the way they treated women in the past was unacceptable, and they were held accountable for it. Stuff like that I can get behind, because now we're questioning morals and we're questioning ethics, right? Which I think are things that are pretty solid. What's good and what's bad can be subjective when it comes to certain things. Raising a child, for example. There may not be a right way, but there's definitely a wrong way. But there are other things that are a little bit more absolute. It's wrong for unsolicited violence. To just go up to someone and punch them in the face unprompted, that's wrong. It's wrong to be racist. That's wrong. That's morally and or ethically wrong. These are things that everyone can clearly look at. They can look at the definition of it. there's writing on a wall, there's tangible metrics, and you can go, oh, this means that. Okay, this is bad, or that is good. And you can kind of make a decision. But when you got these like moving topics and the ebb and flow is favorable or non-favorable depending on the time of year, it kind of gets to this point where, well, you got to take a look at what's socially unacceptable versus what's morally or ethically unacceptable. And I think going back to my point on one of the things that bothers me the most about cancel culture is usually when someone's getting canceled, it's because they did or said something that's socially unacceptable, not morally or ethically unacceptable. And things like that really get me. One thing, and I could think of dozens of examples. I'm sure you all in the comments and even after the show airs, as you're listening, you can think of dozens of examples, maybe even more. But the biggest example that comes to mind right now anyway, well, two. I'll give you two. I'll give you a male and a female. So Scarlett Johansson, very, very popular actress. If you don't know who she is, she was got on the radar of a lot more people when she got introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Black Widow. Very attractive young lady, very intelligent young lady, and very talented young lady in some areas. And she was cast, and you all got to forgive me. I'm sure I could look it up right now. Actually, yeah, let's look this up right now because I was actually reading up on it. So let's go ahead and pull this up. All right, so we're going to type in Scarlett Johansson recast. Okay, what was it? Oh man, I'm drawing a blank here. What was the movie? Here we go. I want to get you all the name of the movie. I'm sorry, I just want to or maybe I know they announced the name of the film. Let's see if this article has it. It caused an international backlash when it was announced. Okay, here we go. Yep. So she had a role. She played the role of or got cast to play a role of a trans woman who she was a prostitution ringleader, Dante Tex Gill, in the film Rub and Tug. And she was cast, and you could think of dozens of reasons of maybe why she was cast. I would like to think that maybe she got cast because she tried out for the role and she got it. She exhibited the character, the emotion, whatever the case may be, that the director, producer, whomever wanted to convey. And they thought that ScarJo would be a perfect fit for the role. And a lot of people some people took issue with this. And the reason I'm going to put emphasis on some is because we all know, and I've said this time and time again, that the vocal majority is usually the minority in the grand scheme of things. The difference is they're louder than everybody. If you walk in a room with 20 people and one person is screaming at the top of their lungs that the room is hot, from outside that room, you're going to think everybody in the room feels that way. And I think that's what happens a lot of times, especially with social media. But anyway, Scarlett Johansson stepped down from the role. She did not play the role. She said that, due to the backlash, she said that she took a insensitive stance and, she was being inconsiderate, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I disagree with that take. I think we find somebody in a position where they're being told that, hey, you're doing something that's wrong. And the person doesn't really know, but they know it's they're walking on eggshells here, and it's not an area they can stand much ground on. So what happens is they're kind of forced into this box where, like, okay, I guess I did something wrong because I'm getting backlash, so I guess I should apologize, but I don't really understand what's going on here, or at least I think I do, or worst case scenario, I don't think I did anything wrong, but I guess I gotta apologize anyway. And she stepped away from the role. Now, there's a scenario like that I think that's just ridiculous. And that's when you get to the point that she did, in my opinion here, I'm not Scarlett Johansson's PR representative, but in my opinion, I think what she did wasn't morally or ethically unacceptable. I think in some people's eyes, again, emphasis on some, it was simply socially unacceptable. And the problem with socially unacceptable is it's all subjective. It basically depends on how someone feels when they see or hear the information. And now they can digest it and react to it. In most cases, they don't even digest it. They just react to it. And now you have somebody who could have potentially she could have bombed. She could have did a horrible job as this character. But potentially, let her make that mistake of bombing, or let her rise to the occasion of being successful. Give her that opportunity. And she kind of had that snatched away, because I guarantee you, in the grand scheme of things, a very, very, very minority, a small group of people had an issue with it, took issue with it. Another issue was with Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart, I don't know if it was the Emmys or the Oscars. I want to say it was the Oscars. But a few years back, he came under fire and stepped away from, he was selected to be the host of the Oscars. And they turned that down, turned that away, and decided not to have Kevin Hart to host the Oscars anymore. And again, this could be the Emmys, but I believe it was the Oscars, so I'm just going to say Oscars. And they said, hey, he should apologize. And I like the way Kevin Hart stood his ground. He basically said, you know what? I'm standing my ground. I apologize about this in the past. I said what I said. It's done. Kevin Hart is a comedian. Almost everything that he says, unless it's deliberately in a serious tone, should never be taken seriously. And he had made a homophobic comment about his son. But he said it in a joking way. He said it in a lighthearted way. Now, one of my favorite people of all time, Ricky Gervais, who's also a comedian, said, now there's anything that you can say is going to be offensive to somebody somewhere. You can get on a public platform and say the alphabet or sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and get up in there and say, hey, you ever notice that Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and ABCs have the same harmony or same melody? And somebody somewhere is going, no, they don't. And you got this person who is drastically offended now because you said this. There's somebody else that's offended that you're a vegetarian. There's someone else offended that you eat meat. There's someone else offended that you wear leather. There's so many people out there who potentially can be offended and will be offended about any and everything. And it was an old tweet from Kevin Hart, and you could argue that, it was distasteful and maybe he shouldn't have said it. That's not the point I want to make here. The point I want to make here is some people did not like it and they canceled them, or attempted to anyway. And it really bugs me that people can kind of take these stances and go I don't like this. And instead of it being hey, this is this person's opinion, or hey, this happens, that it can literally change the political or social landscape of something, and it gets people to the point where I think comedians and artists, musicians or rappers or singers, whoever the case may be, they probably have it the worst, because these creatives are now in a space where they have, since the dawn of time, this space has been a gateway or a mecca of creative freedom and to do any and everything that you wanted. And now we're in the times where people can pick that apart and not even know what the joke or what the song or what the lyric meant. And you have people who can take just a slice, one lyric out of a whole song, or take one piece out of a whole speech, or simply in Scarlett Johansson's case, get casted for something. And you have people going well, this is ridiculous, cancel this person. And I think it's crazy. And for them, it's just do this or else. It's almost kind of like a terrorist organization to a degree. They're really radical. They're this needs to happen or else. the problem with the or else doesn't mean anything. They don't have any significant power or influence, but the way they can change certain things just by simply tweeting or posting a video is ridiculous to me. It's crazy to me. And I think we need to try to take back the culture and have a clear, definitive line on ethics, morals, and the social climate. And just go, hey, did this person do something morally wrong? You know, were they being racist, as an example? That's morally wrong. Racism is morally wrong. And have them deal with the consequences of doing something like that. And you have something like ethically. Okay, this person is donating money to a charity, you know, but he's a drug dealer, so all of his money is drug money. You know, and then you get into the ethics of things, right? But if you just simply don't like the fact that someone eats meat and they were cast as a vegetarian in some movie, and you're like, no, you need to cast a vegetarian. And I think you need to step away from the keyboard and kind of get a better dose of reality. And quarantine doesn't help because now they're limiting their exposure to other people. And in today's society, you find yourself in a place where you don't have to face the person that you're saying whatever to. You don't have to face that reality. Like, you can just get behind a microphone, like I'm doing now. You can get behind a microphone. You can get behind a keyboard. You can get behind a phone screen and just text and type and talk away with no confrontation. So there's no risk of getting punched in the face. There's no risk of seeing someone cry or be pained. And there's no risk of, like, no one can see a celebrity or a politician or an influencer after they log off for the day. Once that TV goes off, once that screen goes off, whatever the case may be goes off, you don't get to see that person's pain, that person's anguish, that person's stress. In some cases, it's like, whatever. I'll go back to Weinstein, for example, Harvey Weinstein. And you go like, okay, you know, what he did was wrong. Screw that guy, right? Whether you feel that way or you don't, you can at least recognize the fact that what he did damaged a lot of lives. So it's a little bit easier to form an opinion on his behavior versus somebody saying or doing something that's just socially unacceptable. You kind of go, okay, well, what does that mean? What is that? I think the biggest thing to think about, the biggest thing to consider is perspective. And there's a lot of things that impact and influence perspective, right? Namely, childhood and adulthood. Your experience as a child on being in a violent household and watching your mom or your dad beat up on the other, you have this perspective about domestic violence. It's either acceptable or it's unacceptable to you. And then you hear about somebody who got fired off of a show or something or a football team. Usually happens a lot in sports, particularly football, American football. Is this person was released from this team due to, you know, domestic violence, whatever the case may be, or a lawsuit or restraining order being filed out against them from a previous domestic partner. And if your perspective on domestic violence is a negative one, because you hate the way your mom treated your father or you hate the way your father treated your mother, you're going to be right up on that hill with the rest of the people chanting like, yeah, cancel this person. But if you never really had a childhood like that where domestic violence was had a negative impact on you, you kind of got to like, oh yeah, what he did was wrong, but kind of like whatever, you know, it doesn't really hit you the same. So I can understand that there's different things out there on perspective, but I feel like one thing that we really need to become aware of is that's the time. The thing about something being socially unacceptable is something may not be socially unacceptable now, then 10 years from now it will be. And you got something that has always been morally and ethically unacceptable. It's just, it wasn't socially unacceptable, so no one said anything about it. The biggest thing is racism and discrimination, the way that African American and or black people have been treated in the U.S. since ever. And in particular, you know, you want to talk about the 50s and 60s and some of the 70s in particular, where a lot of these situations where people had to fight for specific rights, civil rights and whatnot. And, you know, white people could just do whatever to black people or get on a public platform and say whatever about black people. One of my favorite comedians of all time is Don Rickles. And Don Rickles was hilarious. And going back and watching some of Don's old videos, he had a lot of jokes, specifically about black people, you know. And one joke in particular he had, this is going to rub some people off the wrong way, but it's comedy. But this kind of proves my point. One joke that he had was, this was kind of like at a dinner or something honoring Mr. T. And he said, oh, actually, you know what? I won't tell that one. I'll tell another story. So this was a dinner honoring him, Don Rickles himself. And he had the microphone and he was speaking and he said, I'm really happy that there are black people here. I love black people. He said, you guys are all right. And he says, as I'm saying this, I know that one of you is probably up in my hotel room robbing me blind. And everybody laughed. It was funny. It was a joke. And you kind of got to know Don Rickles. You got to know his comedic style. But let's take some of you right now, probably, and or let's take the average Gen Z or millennial who has no idea who Don Rickles is. So all they see is this old white man who's since passed away. But all they see is this old white man making a joke about black people in 2020. And no matter how long ago this recording took place, it's 2020 and they're watching the video now. So what happens is they form an opinion now. They relate it to the social climate now. And they go, hey, this is unacceptable now. So this person should be held accountable now. Not realizing that back then, something like that wasn't necessarily wrong. Now here's, well, it was morally wrong, but, you know, socially fine. And here's the point that I kind of want to make, and I may be losing some of you, but promise you, just hear me out. If you don't know something is wrong because the people around you aren't telling you that it's wrong, it's going to influence your actions and your speech. So for my old school hip hop heads, for everybody listening, I'm sure you remember a time when records came out, you know, cassette tapes, vinyl records. It didn't have a parental advisory label on the cover. It didn't have a parental advisory label on the case. It just was. And it took for committees to be put together and, you know, a lot of West Coast hip hop in particular, but a lot of different things to happen for people to come out and say, hey, this has explicit content on it. You kind of should know about it. The same way movies are being rated, music should be rated too. But if that never happened, you'll kind of have like this precedent, like, oh, but hey, it's okay to not do this. It's okay to do this thing. So if you don't have people around you guiding you in a particular way, you're going to do and say whatever. And then 10, 15, 20, 30 years from that moment, when you realize like, hey, maybe that wasn't so great and you wouldn't do it now, people will take a look at it like and see what you did back then. And they don't give you an opportunity to have a conversation. They don't want a conversation. They're just angry or upset, in most cases spoiled and entitled. And they go, hey, in 1970, you made this off-color joke about a black person. You should be canceled now. Well, sir, I haven't had a joke like that, nor have I endorsed a joke like that in the past 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. No, I don't care. You said it this one time in 1970. So clearly you still think and feel that way now. Which is crazy to me. Like, I think the only way cancel culture can really go away is for all these people who are standing on their platform, their pedestal, and they're screaming for people to be canceled. If it happened to them. If somebody went and go, well, you know what? In 5th grade, you copied off of this person's homework. You're a plagiarizer. You're dishonest. You're taking credit for other people's work. You know what? You should lose your job, because that means 50 years later, 40 years later, or in most cases, it's probably a millennial. So 20 years later, you know, you should get fired from your job because you probably are doing this at work now. until that happens to that person, I don't think they'll quite understand cancel culture and kind of like how it impacts people. I think it's so silly, especially after a long period of time where the person has proven and or exhibited that they're not away anymore. I think it's so silly to go back years and decades to go, hey, this person must still think and feel this way because he said it once, twice, 5 times back in this decade. I think that's crazy to think and feel. And it's really, really unreasonable. They don't even give you an opportunity. Bill Burr, another one of my favorite comedians, and Dave Chappelle, also probably my favorite comedian of all time. And even Jerry Seinfeld said this. People don't give people an opportunity to learn from what they did. They want them to apologize. They want them fired. They want them canceled. And that's it. And Bill Burr, one of my favorite people of all time, he goes, well, how does that help? How does that help the situation? If anything, it may make it worse. Think about somebody that you don't like. I'm going to use a real world example especially for the people at work who are adults and they're working full time. Think about somebody you don't like. Somebody that's a little over the top, someone that's a little too extra, so to speak, at work. You already have a negative disposition towards this person. Let's say you did or said something at work and they didn't like it. So now they want you to apologize. Whether it be something simple like you click your pen too much at work, or you speak too loudly on the phone, or, you talk too loud, or you're in the break room too much, whatever the case may be. You already got a negative disposition towards this person. This person tells the brass goes, well, hey, we want you to apologize now for being loud on the phone in the break room. Now, in your mind, you're going to go, you know what? I don't even want to talk to this person to figure out, why was this wrong? Why was this offensive? Whatever the case may be. I hate this person now. This person is inconvenient. Like, this person is, you're not even going to try to like get to know or try to like dig deeper, especially if it's a situation where that person gets you fired. Think about that. You got bills, you got kids, you got cars, you got loans, you got a house. Things you have that you need to maintain and take care of. Somebody just made it harder for you to do. Are you going to want to, as a person, go and be like, hey, man, you made me lose my job. Now, can you help me understand what I did to offend you? No, you're probably screaming, F that guy. Screw that girl. That's what you're thinking. You don't want to try to dig deeper and figure out what's going on. Now, some people might take a step back and go, wow, I got fired from my job. This might be a really big deal. Maybe I shouldn't have did or said that. Let me take a step back and look. But you and I know, especially when in an emotional state, that's really, really difficult to do. Some people don't even get to do it in the same decade that they made the mistake. Some people don't look back. Think about every past relationship you've been in. You don't realize some of the areas of opportunity that you have until years later. So imagine a person getting fired from their job. They're not going to take a step back and try to figure out what they did wrong. They're going to be angry. Give people an opportunity to learn. Now, if the person doesn't want to learn, if the person doesn't want to take the opportunity to figure out, oh, you know what? That was a little racist. I shouldn't have said that. Or you know what? That was very discriminatory. I shouldn't have said that. Oh, snap. I'm being prejudiced. Maybe I should check myself. If the person doesn't feel that way and they're going, nope, I don't care, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's different. But give someone an opportunity to find out what they did wrong. Give someone, especially if they're coming from a place of ignorance. One thing that I see is we see a lot of people from different cultures holding people outside of that culture accountable to the rules within that culture. And then they get upset when the people outside of that culture are ignorant to that culture and expect them to just know the lay of the land. I think that's a little unreasonable. So I just want to say this. Then I want to read an article and I'm going to let everybody go. When you hear or see someone do or say something that you don't like, the only thing that I ask is think about if that person is, if they've grown. How long ago was this? And I just want you to think about like how long ago you was when you made a mistake. Whether it be something simple as like, peeing your pants or peeing in the bed, a bedwetting problem, or whether it's something like plagiarism, copying off your classmate to get that work assignment done, whether it be something like cheating on your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife. Think about how long ago that was and the lessons you learned from that, and think about your behavior since then. And then I also want you to think about, does the person that you're judging at that moment deserve the same liberty? The same opportunity for you to go, you know what, this person probably changed because I changed. So just something to think about. Now, if somebody is making a statement and it was just last week, it was just last night, it was a month ago, then okay, maybe a little bit more wiggle room there. But we're coming at people trying to take down their livelihood from something that they did or said decades ago. I think that's a little over the top. That said, I want to go ahead and read this poll, everybody. And then I am going to let you all go. So I'm going to read up to a certain point, and I just kind of want to get everybody's take on this poll. This poll is from thehill.com, and it's basically a poll that they did surrounding cancel culture. So it reads, a plurality of voters said that cancel culture has gone too far, according to a recent poll released Wednesday. A total of 46% of registered voters surveyed agreed that cancel culture has gone too far, while 10% said it has not gone far enough. Another 18% said it had neither gone too far nor not far enough, and slightly more than a quarter of respondents, about 26%, said they didn't know or didn't have an opinion, so they basically just don't care. The survey defined cancel culture using dictionary.com's definition, the practice of withdrawing support for or canceling public figures and companies after they have done or said something considered objectionable or offensive. Nearly half of the respondents, 49%, said they believe cancel culture has had a negative effect on society, while 27% said they think it has had a positive impact. 40% responded that they have participated in cancel culture, and about 1 in 10 said they participate in it often. That's crazy to me. About half of Democrats and a third of Republicans reported that they shared their disapproval of a public figure on social media after the figure did something controversial. Age also plays a factor. According to the poll, with those belonging to Gen Z and millennials being most likely to approve of cancel culture, big surprise there, while Gen Xers and baby boomers are more likely to disapprove. A total of 55% of voters ages 18 to 34 reported participating in cancel culture, while 32% of voters over 65 said the same. So I'm not going to read this whole article here. It's a pretty interesting article from what I've read so far. But I kind of just wanted to point a little bit of that out. That like basically, unfortunately, and I know a lot of us listening feel the same way, that we feel like a part of this entitled, thin-skinned generation. And it's really frustrating when not all of us feel that way, but there are a lot of people who are loud, giving the perception that all of us feel this way. But I think the more we look at it, the more we come to find that most of us just don't care. But the fact that age plays a factor, and the fact that a lot of people have actually participated of the people that they polled. Now, I don't know what the final numbers were. I don't know how big the pool was, the pool of people. But I will say it's very discouraging and extremely disappointing to know that the majority of people not only admit to it, but I presume that they don't feel ashamed or see anything wrong with it. To go like, you know what? And it's one thing to express your thoughts, right? We talked about freedom of speech at the top of the episode. It's one thing to express your thoughts. I get that. It's another thing to have malicious intent behind that expression, which really, really, really bugs me. Very sad to say the least. Well, that said, I encourage you all to go and look up that poll, read it, Google some cancel culture polls. I actually started watching this. Adam Carolla came out with a book. I don't know how old the video is. I want to say it's recent though. So he came out with a book, and I believe it's called I Am Your Spirit Animal, something along those lines. And he had this 34-minute video on YouTube that I've only watched about 10 minutes of because I had to get to the show and start my routine. But I am going to finish watching it. And he did a good job of articulating why people who have an adverse opinion on certain things don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, especially if they're not your target audience. And he also talks about how the people, the target of the canceling, shouldn't really care. You know, they shouldn't really go about caring, and depending on the scenario. So I encourage you all to go and listen to that. Adam Carolla. And that's on YouTube. I think if you could just type his name in, it might pop up. That said, everybody, I will keep you all up to date on the gift card giveaway. I will keep you all up to date on my MacBook purchase. But more importantly, participate in the gift card giveaway, everybody. This is for you. It would save me money if I did not have to do it, but I want to do it. I don't have to do it. I want to do it. I want to thank everybody listening, and this is one of the best ways that I know how to do that. So again, 2 $25 gift cards up for grabs that I'm going to give away. All you got to do is reach out to me and tell me what your favorite episode was so far. It could be this episode, or it can be episode 1. You got 51 episodes to choose from, and I can't wait to hear from you all. You know how to contact me. It's in the description below, and I mentioned it earlier in the episode as well. That said, everybody, I'm going to let you all go. I'm going to see if I can edit this show and get it out sooner rather than later. And as always, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.